Madeline Soto's 13th birthday party was on Sunday, February 25th. The party was at a relative's house and she was surrounded by family. But one person who wasn't there was her mother, Jen Soto. She was working. Madeline's mother and father were not together. In fact, her dad married another woman a couple of months after Madeline was born. But there was a man living in her house. Her mom's boyfriend, Stephan Stearns. Stearns was at the birthday party, and at some point after that party and before she was supposed to be at school the next day, Madeline was murdered. Stearns is the prime suspect because he was the last known person to be with her, and he's alleged to have hundreds of disturbing photos on his phone of Madeline being sexually abused. Investigators are putting together a timeline. They have gathered surveillance video from the complex where they lived, tracking Stearns' movements. They also have license plate reader information and eyewitness statements all connected to Stearns and his car. He is charged for all the images found on his phone, but has waived all of his court appearances. But tonight, we see him for the first time since his arrest on dashcam video being transported. Then we'll take a listen to the 911 calls from the day Madeline was reported missing as we continue our investigation into the tragic life and death of Madeline Soto.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Madeline Soto was a victim of domestic violence. That's what we've been told. A victim of domestic violence. It's not surprising, but when you actually hear the words and think about what those words represent, it takes you back a little bit, especially with her. Remember what she was telling people? Telling her friend, you know, when I'm 13, I'm going to go live in the woods. Doesn't seem to me like it was for some sort of an adventure to get in touch with nature. Seems to me, based upon all these circumstances, that it was to get out of the house, to just get away from it. But she didn't get away. She was murdered. And we've been told she's a victim of domestic violence. But so far, no one's been charged. No one's charged. So, I mean, you're looking at the two people who were living with her in the house. So it seems clear to me that it's one or the other or both. If it's domestic violence, I mean, there could be another scenario somewhere, I guess, that you could put together if there's other people living in the home or a relative or someone else. But like, let's be honest here. What are we talking about? Because you look at all the circumstances surrounding when and where all this happened, like the disappearance was from the home, according to these two. But she's a victim of domestic violence. So it doesn't match. Their story doesn't match. Their story is she was dropped off in the church parking lot and then walked to school. That would be like abduction, some stranger, some pedophile. Oh, wait, the alleged pedophile was living at home. The home where apparently she's the victim of domestic violence, as well as all the alleged sex abuse that was documented on Stephan Stearns' phone. But as we sit here tonight, still no one's been charged. They're taking their time. But if Jen was involved, the mother, would they be taking their time like this? With him, he's locked up, right? This guy's locked up. But every time he's supposed to show up in the courtroom, he's a no-show. He's a no-show. Doesn't want to be seen in public. Waives his appearances. for all these charges related to what was found on his phone. So we really haven't seen or heard much from Stephan Stearns after those television interviews that he did when Madeline Soto was a missing person and people were looking for her. Some perhaps believe that she was the victim of an abduction. But that's not apparently what the medical examiner and investigators are talking about here. That's not in play. That is not in play in this scenario. And as a result, this guy doesn't want to show his face anywhere. The only time that we've really seen him since the arrest was that, they call it the perp walk, right? Where the perp walks from the jail to a vehicle and is, you know, the media's there, you get to see him. Sometimes you bark some questions out. Many times they don't answer, sometimes they do. But that's really the only time we've seen him since his arrest. But tonight we're going to see some more of Stephan Stearns. But first I want to bring in our panel of experts. Joining me in Orlando, Florida, human behavior expert and jury consultant Susan Constantine is with us. In San Diego, California, forensic psychologist Dr. Joni Johnston, there she is. And the chief of police of the Talladega College, retired homicide detective. You recognize him from television. Chris Anderson is with us.
Let's try that.
Hosted Reasonable Doubt, and I think we hear Susan in the background. Have we hooked up, Susan? Are you here? There she is. Ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Fantastic. Everyone's ready to go. Great to see everyone. Thank you for being here. So there's video tonight that we're going to take a look at and some images of Stephan Stearns. And this is when he's being transported, right? So there's the deputy is driving and he's in the back of the vehicle being transported. And it seems like the little slider in the middle is open, so there can be some communication. I want to take a look at some still frames that we have of this first. And here, the darting eyes of Stephan Stearns in that back seat. Now this is before, this is when he first gets in. No real communication back and forth yet, but this is like him first getting in the car. Then we have a moment here where he's looking out the window as well. And one other moment where he's looking down. And I want to start here, Susan, with this body language. He's just been arrested. This is Friday. It's a couple days after being arrested for the highest profile case, obviously in Central Florida, but really around the country at the time. What are your thoughts about what you see from him? Because I know you've reviewed the video.
Sure. So what I'm watching at, first of all, is that his eyes are going side to side, which is, he's got this frozen kind of freeze response. But when he's looking from side to side, he's looking in the direction of the police officer. He's looking as if he's curious, he's suspicious. What is that officer really doing and what is he thinking about? Then when he's looking outside the window, it's like he's detaching from inside that vehicle to the outside, trying to connect with it. But he's also pondering. This is a time for him to go into internal thinking, and he's processing. Generally, that's looking down. But when he's doing this here, he's kind of detaching from what's inside, looking outside, and he's thinking. Then he's processing downward. You see his head go down. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening there. Could be an emotion, some internal emotions, things that he's processing there. Could be that he's thinking through. That sometimes people will process down into that, what we call kinesthetic, or it's called auditory digital area. That's what he's doing here. But the whole point is that he's was looking at the officer, waiting to see what his responses are, and he's keeping a really close look at what he's doing because it's helping him to kind of determine what's really going on.
So, Detective Chris Anderson, let me go to you now. So, you're transporting a notorious suspect in a murder, someone who's been charged with all these images, hundreds of images of this young girl being sexually abused. It's a super high-profile defendant. It's a big moment. What are the thoughts of the officer who needs to transport this suspect?
Number one, I'm thinking about my own safety and the safety of getting him to and from where he needs to be. So I'm not a huge fan of leaving that window completely open, because I have seen suspects that were able to climb through those windows and maybe even attack an officer, manipulate your handcuffs around and get an arm around where you could actually do some harm to myself, which causes danger to the public. So I've never been a huge fan of keeping that window open. If the person whenever I was doing transports, if the person wanted to speak, then yeah, we could speak, but I'm going to do it in a manner that he's safe, I'm safe, and the public is safe. So I'm not a huge fan of keeping those windows open when you're transporting a known suspect like this gentleman.
So, Dr. Joni Johnston, your thoughts about the mindset, the mentality of this man, right? So he's been arrested. He claimed that there was an accidental factory reset of his phone, which I would guess in his mind he would think they would find nothing. But apparently, according to investigators and prosecutors, they found hundreds of these images. It's like he's been caught literally red-handed at this moment. He's been thrown into this firestorm, yet he refuses to show up in court, doesn't want to be seen. What are your thoughts about this suspect, Stephan Stearns?
Well, I think in some respects, he's got to still be in shock, because this is somebody, if the allegations are true, who has gotten away with a tremendous amount of illegal activity, specifically sexual abuse of a child, for a couple of years. And so sometimes when offenders get away with things like that for a long time, they develop this sense of, okay, I'm never going to get caught. I'm so smart. I'm so sly. And so I would imagine it was a huge shock for him when he was arrested. So I would imagine, as Susan was saying, in terms of looking down, part of that thinking is reality is setting in. He knows what's on that phone. He knows what they found on that phone. And he knows that there's not going to be an easy way out of this, if at all.
Now, in the video posted on YouTube by The Docket, Stephan Stearns appears to loosen up a little bit with the sheriff's deputy after a conversation about all things cough drops. Let's take a look.
Please forgive my cough. I've been trying to get rid of it for the past 2 or 3 days, and prior to that I had a really bad cold. And
I always found the wrinkle on honeys, the honey wrinkles, to really split out your throat.
I like those, man, but have you ever tried the berry ones? The Ricola berry?
No.
Phenomenal. The Ricola berry ones,
Okay, Detective Chris Anderson, your thoughts. There's been a lot of chatter about the conversation, and that they're actually having a conversation. How unusual is it? Is there anything, is there a reason behind it other than just general human nature that you're in a car with someone for a period of time and you start talking?
I've sat in the room with a lot of murderers, a lot of murderers. And they are, no matter what they've been charged with, no matter what they've done in society, you still treat them as human beings. So what I see here is a person that cares about his job, about human life, and he sees a man that's been charged with one of the most horrific crimes that we have in society today, but he still treats him like a human. So I think this officer should be commended for even being able to have that conversation. Some people may not have been able to have a conversation with this man, knowing what he stands accused of. Sometimes it's hard, but you have to put that aside as a law enforcement officer.
Dr. Joni Johnston, your thoughts about the tone and nature of this conversation?
I would have to agree. I mean, your job as a sheriff in transporting somebody is really to do your job. And that does involve putting what you know about the case, what you think this person may have done, and focusing on the task at hand. And I mean, I used to work at a maximum security prison, and I saw custody officers, the best ones, do this all the time. They just had to. And as a psychologist going in and talking to a lot of different murderers and rapists and those kinds of things, same thing. You have to be able to focus on your goals versus the behavior of the person that you're interviewing, or it's impossible to do it.
And it's like we cover trials here on Court TV, and the people who are accused, many of them are locked up. They need to be brought in and out of the courtroom. They've got to be put in the holding cell. They have to be transported from the jail to the courthouse every day. So I've seen it myself as well in those scenarios. If you're in the courtroom, you'll see it. You'll see the conversation back and forth and the handling. And, you know, every once in a while you see someone who becomes dangerous, but that's why, is that part of it, Chris, to create that relationship that it could almost bring down the level of tension to a certain degree and the potential for a defendant to become explosively dangerous?
Yeah, you always want to establish a rapport with anyone that you're speaking with, even if he's not the interview. You know, your interviewer. If he's not the investigator that's working this case, you know, you still have to establish a rapport, because the interaction that you have with this man could affect the investigation. So you never want to put yourself in such a situation whereas to make this person blow up. Plus, he's charged with a horrific crime, just like I just said. You know, at any moment, he could take it upon himself to say, okay, this is my opportunity to escape, and I am going to destroy anything in my path, which means that this officer, which he knows this, I'm sure, he knows that his life may be in danger. So, yeah, you have to establish that rapport with anyone that you come in contact with.
Susan Constantine, your thoughts about the conversation, the cough drop conversation?
Oh my gosh, there's so much stuff that's going on here. And to everyone's point here is that what we're looking at is that this police officer is a master rapport builder. He is tapping into his sensories. He's tapping into minimizing, you know, what had actually happened, right? He's building this wonderful rapport with him so that he just keeps this conversation going on by using these conversation prompters and minimizers. Brilliant work on the sheriff's, because what he's doing is he is warming him up to and connecting with him, because he knows that once he's going into the police station, everything else is going to happen. So when he's talking about those drops that he's putting in his mouth, all he's doing is connecting. He's trying to open up this conversation, and when he does that, watch to see he leans in. Bam, right there, he already determined he had rapport with Stearns, because this was brilliant work on his part, and I applaud him for what he did.
Now, I want to go to another section of the conversation where he's leaning in as they talk about, of all things, classical music. And here's some of the transcript from this part of the conversation. What kind of music do you like? The officer asks. Stearns, classical. You like classical music? Sometimes. You're the first person that has ever said classical music. Like what? Give me a classical song. And Stearns says, I forget the exact names, but some Mozart, Beethoven, some occasional rock. And then the officer says, well, you're the first one. You're the first one ever. Dr. Jody Johnston, why is he like volunteering that I'm into this classical? I mean, is he really? It's almost like you're trying to impress somebody on a date or something. Oh, yeah, I listen to all the big ones, Beethoven, Mozart, you know, the big ones.
Well, I don't think Stephan Stearns is stupid. And I think one of the things that he's going to need to survive in the environment he's about to enter is being able to establish rapport and connect with people that he interacts with. And so I think he is making an attempt not only to connect with this officer by talking about cough drops, et cetera, joining the conversation, but you're right, also trying to impress him that, hey, I'm a human being. I'm not just a human being. I'm a human being who has refined taste. And so I think that's part of his strategy at this point.
Okay, Susan Constantine, I know you have to run right now, but you're going to be back top of the hour for us, helping us on another case. Dr. Joni Johnson, Detective Chris Anderson staying with us. When we come back, we'll take a listen to some 911 calls in this case, plus coming up next hour.
In Santa Fe, New Mexico, explosive new revelations in the Alec Baldwin shooting case. Why did the defense want to call Helen Mirren and Harrison Ford as witnesses? Will this trial be impacted by celebrity?
If real guns are going to be used on movie sets, there needs to be a lot of safety protocols in place. We never want this to happen again.
We are underway in the trial of doomsday prophet Chad Daybell.
Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty against him.
Investigators have recovered human remains at Chad Daybell's residence.
There's no way, Morgan. I can never come up with this.
His wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, has already been convicted.
Now, will her husband end up with the same fate?
It's just so hard to know where the truth ends.
It's the doomsday prophet, Chad Daybell, on trial.
We dropped her off at school, close to school. She wanted to walk the rest of the way. She was spotted walking by the church, by the middle school, on the cameras. They saw her hang out in the parking lot for a little bit and then get up and leave. They didn't see a vehicle or anything else. They just saw her walk away around 9 a.m., heading towards the school, but she never made it.
None of that is true, by the way, according to investigators in this case. None of it's true. There's no video of her by the church. Her and Stephan Stearns didn't drop her off. She didn't walk the rest of the way anywhere. Just didn't happen. I mean, by the way, there's no evidence of it. There's zero evidence of it other than the statements of Jen Soto and Stephan Stearns when she was a missing child. And we haven't heard from them since she's become a murdered child. Now, before these interviews, there were 911 calls that were made. And we don't have the identity, but we don't believe either one of these calls you're about to hear, or either one of these people you're going to hear on the calls, is Jen Soto. We think it's relatives, perhaps a sister, maybe Madeline's grandma. But let's take a listen to the 911 calls that were made the day that Madeline was reported missing.
And do you need police, fire, or medical?
Police, possibly. I'm reporting a missing child.
Okay. And what is the name of the business there, ma'am?
The business?
Okay. And the child that you're trying to report missing, are you calling on behalf of the parent?
Yes, on behalf of the mother.
Okay. Okay. And then and ma'am, how old is the child? And could I go ahead and get her name?
Yes, it's.
And is she white, black, or Hispanic?
She's white.
Okay.
And dirty blonde hair, blue eyes.
Okay, hold on with me here. And then what color shirt and pants was she last seen wearing?
Hold on, let me ask. Then, what color shirt and what was she last wearing? Hold on, we're finding out.
Okay, and then how long has it been, though, since you guys have last seen her?
Since this morning. She was dropped off at school this morning, and apparently she never showed up. We called everyone we knew. No one's seen her.
Okay. And then, ma'am, I just want to confirm, though, was she last seen from this address? Is this where you guys last saw her?
No. She was last seen at the church next to Hunters Creek Middle School. I think it's called Peace Church. I'm not sure of the exact address. She was wearing a dark green hoodie, I believe.
What is the name of the church?
I think I'm pretty sure it's called Peace Church. It's the one right next to Hunters Creek Middle School. No.
Got it. It's across the street from it?
I believe so, yeah. There's two. I just forgot about the other one. It's not Focal Point Church. It's,
Well, is it Peace United Methodist Church?
Yes.
Okay.
That one.
Okay, is she diagnosed with any medical, mental conditions at all?
I know she takes medication for ADHD, and I'm pretty sure that's it.
Okay. Sorry, bear with me here. And is she known to carry anything on her person, like a pocket knife, pepper spray, anything at all like that?
No,
okay.
No, nothing like that.
Does she have a cell phone that she might keep on her person?
She doesn't. She had one, but she left it at home conveniently today.
Okay.
Hi, I called not that long ago reporting a missing child. I just wanted to know how long the cops are going to take to get here.
Okay, hold on. Let me open up the call and let's see. The call is still currently pending to have the deputies respond out there. That we don't have any available deputies. We still have the call up, though, holding.
Okay, so no one's on their way yet?
Not yet, no.
Does it take long for them to respond to the call?
If there's a big emergency in the area and there's no units available, they put the calls on hold. But as soon as one becomes available, they respond to the next pressing call.
Okay, yeah, we just need one here urgently. So
I understand. We still have the call. We still have the call holding.
Yes.
Yep, we still have the call holding for them. I'll go ahead and update them with the information.
All right, thank you, because this happened very recently, so we just want to get everyone here. She's been missing since 8 a.m., so we want to get everything done as soon as possible to try to find her.
I understand.
Do you need police, fire, or medical?
No, it's not a medical issue. We have a missing child since this morning. We already called 3 times, and the police didn't show up yet.
Yes, ma'am, I see it right here for you. Yes, ma'am, I see it. This is waiting for a deputy to respond.
They haven't come here yet.
I'm aware, ma'am. I see it. It's waiting for a deputy to respond.
You're waiting for a deputy to respond?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long more do we need to wait? It's a child missing.
I understand that, ma'am, but I'm just not able to give out ETA. I don't know when they'll be there.
So how long do we need to wait? This is an emergency.
Ma'am, we have the information, but they're trying to get to someone as soon as possible.
So this is not important for you guys? Really?
Ma'am, we're very busy in the area. Look, I understand they'll be there as soon as they can, okay?
Let's bring back in our guest, still with me, Dr. Joni Johnston and Detective Chris Anderson. And joining us, the editor of the Osceola News-Gazette, Ken Jackson, is back with us. Ken, before I get into these 911 calls, I always want to check with you. Anything new in the case? Have you spoken to anyone? What's going on down there?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Vinny. So we heard from the state attorney, Andrew Bain, the end of last week. I weighed in when we actually asked him about another case, and everything seems to gravitate back to Madeline Soto these days around here. And when we asked about the details in the investigation, he said that they're being kept from the public pretty fervently to prevent any leaks, because they want to make sure that they don't taint a potential jury pool when Stephen Stern goes to trial. I mean, he's scheduled for trial in the May 13th trial block. I tend to think that's probably going to get pushed back. It'll get a continuance on that. But State Attorney Bain is adamant that they want to have a fair trial. They want this tried in the area, in the 9th District, by people from the 9th District, rather than either moving the trial elsewhere because of the notoriety or having to bring in a jury pool from elsewhere.
That's fascinating, and it's almost as if they're going to try him on these first charges because there's no statute of limitations on murder. If they're going to charge him for the murder, you could just sit back and try to convict him on this. Interesting approach to everything down there. Detective Chris Anderson, I want to get your reaction to that. Could it be, could they be in a place where hey, we know he did it, we have enough here, but state attorney's holding back and just wants to get the conviction, the easy conviction for all the things that were found on his phone?
Either scenario could be true, but as an investigator, from an investigative standpoint, you never want to rush through a case like this because you only have one shot at it, and you don't want to mess it up so bad that he's never tried and convicted if he is guilty of her murder. So speed is not necessary. Time is on your side. You have some very solid cases against him. And for me as an investigator, I'm going to take as much time as I need to make sure that we get this right.
Now, Dr. Joni Johnson, I want to get back to those 911 calls. As we listen to those, was there anything in there that struck you about the 911 calls that were made when Madeline was finally reported missing?
Well, obviously, the first thing that stood out is that it's not Jen Soto who's making the call. I mean, that just is kind of mind-boggling to me. I mean, if it was my kid, I'd be on that phone. And, you know, I'm not going to be somebody who says, okay, they didn't show the right level of emotion, because I do think people sometimes have different responses, and this wasn't Jen Soto. But, you know, but I have to say, I found myself listening to this series of calls, feeling this increased sense of urgency myself. I mean, I would be down there at the, you know, at the police station by that second call, you know, banging that door down saying, you know, where my kid is missing. You know, what is the problem? Someone needs to help me. I'd be out there looking for my kid. So those are the things that really stood out for me, is that they're waiting. But again, the first thing is, here is somebody calling and turning apparently to Jen, it sounds like, and asking her all these questions. Why isn't she the one talking to 911?
And she's the one that's got all the information, all the details that we heard in these television interviews. Subsequent to all this, we heard all these details that she was providing. Ken, in those calls, do you hear any inconsistencies, anything that's outside of what we've heard from the story of Jen Soto, the story of Stephan Stearns?
Well, I'm with you, the doctor here. If I would think Jen Soto would be on the phone herself, especially after that first call. The second or third calls you would think would come from her. Now, you know, whoever's making the call did ask, you know, what was she wearing? And it took a moment to get that information from Jen. And so, you know, these are things that she rattled off in the interviews with television the day or two after. Now, granted, those were probably rehearsed by that point, because these calls are coming on the Monday. This would have been February 26th, the day that she was reported missing.
Detective Chris Anderson, this is a missing child case, and it just seems like, you know, my child, I've got the information, I know what she was wearing, I know everything. I'm not seeing that. Does that raise a red flag for investigators out of the box?
So out of the box, first call, it doesn't raise any red flags. Second, third calls, absolutely, because I've seen it where, you know, you're in such, you know, dismay that your child is missing during a time like this. I can understand having a family member making that initial phone call to get law enforcement to you, where you can give them the information while you collect yourself almost. But after that first call and they've not responded, the second call, no, maybe my family member did something wrong and they need to be here because I need to find my child. So the second call, then yeah, I'm making the call myself. Third call, you know, I would be way more upset, because as a father, now I've called you 3 times. My child is still missing. I need to find my child. So does it raise a red flag with the first call? No. Second call, third call, absolutely.
Detective Chris Anderson, great to have you on the program. Hopefully we'll see you again really, really soon. Dr. Joni Johnson and Ken Jackson staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about the medical examiner releasing that statement about the death of Madeline Soto, a victim of domestic violence.
Today.
Now, we are here on Hickory Road in St. Cloud, where Madeline Soto's body was found. And if you take a glance behind me, you see there's not really much to this road. I mean, there's a little flat land on the left, a little brush on the right. It seems like you'd be able to see something from your car as you pass down this road, but it's not a busy road. There's only been 15, maybe 20 cars that have passed by since we've been here for the past half hour or so. And also, there's no security cameras on any of these light posts. But as we continue this way, We are reminded that this actually is where Madeline Soto's body was found, by this memorial set up by community advocates, family members, maybe even some friends. Because right back there in that span of trees is where her body was found by police.
So one of the big parts of this investigation, obviously, is the medical examiner's report, the autopsy, and the report of this investigation. In this case, we're not going to get the medical examiner's report. It's not going to be released like many reports are released in Florida. Take a look. WFTV and Court TV also have been notified by the medical examiner's office that it cannot release its report on Madeline Soto's autopsy. The report is confidential and exempt from being publicly released because it involves a minor whose death was related to an act of domestic violence. Okay, but that speaks volumes, doesn't it? I mean, it does to me. It does to me. It's like, tell me without telling me, right? Let's bring back in our guests, still with me, Dr. Joni Johnston and Ken Jackson, and joining us now, board certified forensic pathologist, Dr. Priya Banerjee as well. Ken, I just want to begin with you. You have an update on the medical examiner?
Well, no, I just did some checking on the state statute that regulates all this. Now, this is not a medical examiner's policy about not releasing it in this case when it's a minor related to an act of domestic violence, because this makes it exempt from public records laws, which I've said before, they're among the most open in the nation. I mean, that's why you hear about Florida man so much, because these records are readily available and these cases are available. So the state statute states in a case like this that when you have a case that makes the report confidential like that, it's confidential. Now, this is where I'm kind of connecting dots here. Except that the surviving parent of a deceased minor may view and copy the autopsy report if the surviving parent did not commit the act of domestic violence which led to the minor's death. Now, here's the dots I'm connecting. Jennifer Soto has yet to be charged with anything. If she ends up being charged as, say, an accessory to all of these things, or even the accessory to murder, then she's party to committing the act. I wonder if she's ever going to be able to see this report.
And I wonder if she's seen it yet. That's a great, great point. Right. Dr. Priya Banerjee, let me go to you. If you're a medical examiner and you have to deal with the laws and what you can release, can't release, what the medical examiner is saying here, it involves a minor whose death was related to an act of domestic violence. How would a medical examiner get that information and come to that conclusion?
I think that's a great point where we can sort of read between the lines here. You know, that there's a collaboration with the police. There have been times when I was involved in an autopsy with a homicide, and they might have wanted me to hold the cause of death for a day or two just to get more investigation. Obviously, I think they're much further along in this case, and now that her cause and manner are determined by my colleagues, I know they're not released, but they're determined. They probably shared that information and came to the conclusion together with the police that the most likely suspect is the mom's boyfriend, and who knows about the mom as well. And so they're not releasing it because these were the two adults closest to her.
And you're talking about domestic violence, right? It's as related to an act of domestic violence. Very, very specific here. This isn't a stranger. So Dr. Joni Johnston, to me, this is so important because from the beginning, Stearns and Jen Soto were telling a story. This is a different story than what they were telling.
It really is. And you're absolutely right, because what this is saying is it speaks to the relationship between Madeline and the people who murdered her. I mean, as you pointed out, when you're talking about domestic violence, you're talking about a pretty narrow pool of people that are suspects.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Priya Banerjee, they have cause and manner, you believe, right? Holding it back because
I do.
You say it's a result of domestic violence. So now you're talking about who is connected. In order to know that someone is connected to this, you would also, in this autopsy, there would have to be some evidence of homicide, right? There would have to, it has to be.
Absolutely, absolutely.
If you're talking about domestic violence, then it's homicide.
Right. Absolutely. I think that pigeonholes the manner very clearly into homicide. That, she didn't die of any other reason. It wasn't an accident, no natural disease. This was, a very unfortunate outcome of someone doing something to her. And, we don't practice in a black box. I say that all the time. And that, my colleagues can determine the injuries, but you don't really get that domestic violence component until you look at the investigation, which is they're working with the police.
And Ken, have we heard it all from Jen Soto anywhere, anytime since those initial television interviews?
I wish I could tell you otherwise. We have not. Best kept secret in town where she is, who she's with. I'm sure she's got an attorney that has told her to not talk like Stephan in the back of the transport vehicle that we saw earlier in the show. So, like I said, I wish I could tell you otherwise, but nothing new.
All right. Big thank you to all our guests, Dr. Joni Johnston, Ken Jackson, Dr. Priya Banerjee. Thank you all so much. We'll see you again really soon.